Good evening all. My name is Richard Thomson. I'm Chair of Economical Energy. And on behalf of the Economical Energy team, I'd like to welcome you all here. I hope you're enjoying the evening and you take the opportunity to talk to the Economical Energy team and learn something more of the company and the market that we're in. Shortly, I'm going to hand over to our founder, Matt Forrest, who has conceptualised this project and who, with his team, is working to make it a physical reality. Matt and I met at the earliest conceptualisation stage, and I have vigorously supported the development of the project into becoming a company and now ready to move quickly to commercialisation. However, before I hand over, I want to make some general observations about the market that this company will dwell in. It's called the Long Duration Energy Storage Market, or LDES. And what it really means is it's the market where energy is stored for periods between 4 hours and maybe 80 hours or longer, and then returned to the grid. So it doesn't matter which way we look at our energy future, we are going to require a lot of storage. Currently we see it with batteries providing short-term storage. But more importantly, in the long term, LDES will take a much more major role, and it is required to cover the intermittency of renewables, obviously, but more broadly, providing support to the grid and also to the transmission systems. McKinsey's, together with a number of corporates such as Rio, have prepared a detailed report on the LDES market. And I just want to pick out 3 critical key conclusions they had. The first is that by 2050, 10% of all electricity that is consumed will have been generated from LDES systems. The second key milestone is that the demand for LDES commences once you get to 60% renewable energy generation from the bulk power system. And that's where South Australia is right now. And it's where McKinsey see the rest of the world on average being by 2030. The other observation that they make, and which I think is very important, is that by 2040 we will require 400 times the amount of LDES storage that's currently in place, and it will come at a cost of between 1.5 and 3 trillion US dollars. The market space is huge. And as that learned professor would say, and why is this so? Well, there are 2 fundamental reasons. Firstly, of course, the intermittency of the major renewable sources, solar, wind, tidal, and basically anything other than geothermal and biomass are intermittent. Secondly, the move to hydrogen as both a fuel and an energy carrier. At the present time, hydrogen can only effectively be produced by electrolysis or by converting biomass. By electrolysis, you need scads of electricity. And if you need lots of electricity generation, which is green, then renewable energy generation will increase, and so will storage requirements by very large margins. So at the moment, the LDES market is in its infancy, but that will have changed in the space of the next 8 years. The only major LDES storage at the moment is pumped hydro, and it has 90% of the market. But in future, it will be constrained by both geological and weather constraints. We will recognise that as the market develops, there will be vigorous competition from a range of technologies, but the better ones, such as our VIPER system, will become a significant part of this growing international market. And why do we think we will be there? We are very confident of our competitive advantages. Our system is based on proven physics, but we have novel patented features. We support the grid. We can operate for long duration, up to 80 hours. Our plants will last between 50 and 60 years. We generate electricity at a low cost due to excellent round-trip efficiencies. And importantly, we actually have a relatively small surface footprint. So we think this is the making of another exciting South Australian development, and we hope by this evening's close you will agree with us.
Forrest, and I'm the founder and managing director at Economical Energy. A bit of an overview about what I'm going to speak to you about this evening. So I'm going to begin with an introduction to myself, who I am and how I got here, the need for energy storage, the types of energy storage that we currently have, then into the VIPER technology, so what it is, why it makes sense, and what we're doing to develop the VIPER energy storage system. Also briefly cover who else is working on gravity energy storage, as this sets the scene for the market and gives context. And finally, the team that's working with me. So, who am I? Well, I really like making things and have done ever since I was a kid. If you speak to any of my family who are here this evening, they will certainly be able to attest to that. With regard to my work, and things that I work on, I really want to know that I'm doing the absolute best that I can and the most that I can. And that has fed through into my choice of career and in starting Economical Energy. Climate change is a huge problem, and I really just want to know that I'm doing everything I can to work towards that, to work towards solving that. I generally have a pretty optimistic outlook on life, and this sometimes has an influence on the timing of things, and so as a result, this has had some impact on the artistic flair of these slides, as you will soon notice. I'm also quite introverted and have a disposition for stints of solitude. This is actually quite relevant to the VIPER technology and how that came about. I'd actually taken a week off of work to work on another project that I was working on. And sort of, actually, ever since the 2016 blackouts in South Australia, I've been thinking quite a bit about energy storage, what mechanisms there are, and pros and cons of each. And so during this week off of work, I actually conceptualised what is now the VIPER technology. It went through hundreds of iterations in my head, and yeah, I'm pretty proud to be showing it off this evening. So, why do we need energy storage? Well, climate change, we know, is a big problem. We know that we have wind and solar power. But what do we do when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine? So on climate change, burning things for energy isn't great. And scientists have been telling this for quite some time. We're really starting to see the effects of this with more extreme weather events and disasters, such as recent floods, bushfires, and pole temperature records. So we have clean power, we have wind and solar power, and they're cheap and clean, but unfortunately they're intermittent. And this means that sometimes we have too much, which means that we need to turn it off, we need to waste it essentially, and sometimes we don't have enough. When we don't have enough, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we revert back to gas and diesel generation, which is emitting more CO2 and contributing to further climate change. So what would really be the ideal solution is if we can store the renewable energy when we've got too much and release it when we don't have enough. So that brings us to storage. So the energy storage that we have, currently we've got pumped hydro, we've got batteries, and there's also sort of a suite of other technologies that I won't touch on too much because they either suffer from low round trip efficiency or high capital cost, or both. So onto pumped hydro, it accounts for roughly 95% of all stored energy worldwide. It's a gravity-based energy storage technology, and so the old E equals mgh, which you may remember from roughly year 10 physics, applies here. And so just to draw your attention to the architecture of pumped hydro, there's sort of a lower and an upper mass aggregation, a means connecting them to transfer that mass. And there's a difference in elevation between the upper and lower mass aggregations. The drawbacks of pumped hydro works really well, but it does have some drawbacks. One of these is ecology, so it means flooding large valleys. Additionally, when there are droughts, there's not only a water shortage, but that can influence energy security as well. And furthermore, it has a requirement for natural elevation. The best sites for this, or the most economical sites for this, are already taken, and the remaining sites are not economical. Batteries. So you might be familiar with lithium-ion batteries. We do have some of these on the electricity grid, such as South Australia's big battery, the Hornsdale Power Reserve near Jamestown. Drawbacks of this are its cost, with a capital cost of roughly $700 per kilowatt hour. They also suffer from degradation. Essentially, they get smaller as they get older and as they're used. And there's also supply chain constraints. You might have heard of the massive price spikes in lithium and other raw materials for batteries, and that's driven by supply and demand for batteries for battery electric vehicles. So moving on to the VIPER concept. It's a gravity energy storage, just like pumped hydro. And you'll notice that the architecture is actually somewhat similar to pumped hydro, in that there's an upper mass aggregation, a lower mass aggregation, and a means of transporting the mass between them. The key difference, one of the key differences of our system is that the lower mass aggregation is deep underground, and instead of using water, we use a granular mass material that's made from mine waste. And this is 2 to 2.5 times heavier than water, which means that we can fit more mass in the same excavated volume. So why does the VIPER make sense? Going back to first principles, we can see that the amount of energy stored in a gravity energy storage system is proportional to the product of the mass and the height. And this system can easily support a lot of mass. So the stockpiles, the pellets are just sitting on rock on the ground. And by going underground, we can access a lot of height. And so by being able to store a lot of energy in a singular system, we can offset the costs of excavation and other equipment. Kind of covered that. So speaking about lots of mass, the type of order of magnitude mass that we're talking about for such systems that store useful amounts of energy for big energy grids is tens to hundreds of kilotons. And while that sounds like a lot of mass, and it definitely is, it's something that's routinely handled, particularly in the mining industry, where here we see stockpiles of iron ore pellets getting ready to go on ships. At these ports, they also have equipment for handling this bulk material, capable of 2 to 4 kilotons per hour, which is also in the same order of magnitude as what's required for a large-scale VIPER energy system. Additionally, by going underground, we can get access to lots of height. So underground mines go really deep. The deepest mines in Australia are in the order of 2 kilometres deep, and the deepest in the world in South Africa go to 4 kilometres deep. In the mining industry, there are already bucket elevators that are used to lift material through 700 metres in one go. Our system is a little bit different, and that is because it has some different requirements. So we have a proprietary bucket elevator with a patent pending on several of the aspects. One of the key aspects is that we're using modern composite materials. And this means that we can get to a larger height capacity and a larger transport rate, which means a higher energy storage system power capacity, using smaller and cheaper vertical shafts. Additionally, compared to existing bulk elevators, it needs to be bidirectional, meaning that it can lift and lower the bulk material. So what are we doing to develop the VIPER? So to begin with, we built the lab demo model. Following that will be the test unit, commercial unit, and finally greenfield unit. So the lab demo model is what's on display today. We'll fire this up after the speeches and show you that it works and how it works. This has proved to be a great learning platform for us developing the technology, learning about intricacies, and also as a communications platform to communicate how the technology works. After this, we're looking to build a test unit, which will test the design and manufacture process. We're going to build this in a warehouse. It'll be roughly 7 metres tall, but it will be loaded in a way that simulates a 200 metre deep system, and will have a nameplate power capacity of 30 kilowatts. The control system electronics that we develop for this will be identical to future systems, and we look to get started on this later in 2022. After this, we'll get on with the commercial unit, which we plan to install at an underground mine in South Australia. We're in communication with Oz Minerals and have a letter of support from them with regard to the ongoing development of feasibility of this project. So this will be 460 metres deep, or the lower stockpile will be that deep. And it'll be capable of powering 500 homes for about 5 hours. And this is planned for roughly 2024. Following this is sort of the holy grail of long duration energy storage for the grid. This is what we're calling our greenfield unit. It'll be at least 1,000 metres deep, sort of 1 to 2 kilometres we expect. We'll have a purpose-built decline tunnel from the surface. It'll be made up of multiple modular VIPER systems, and a single unit could power 260,000 homes for 10 hours. Our current estimates suggest we can get that to a capital cost of $220 per kilowatt hour, with reference to the Hornsdale Power Reserve, which was built for $700 per kilowatt hour. And this is looking at 2025 and beyond. So, who else is working on gravity energy storage? So we're going to briefly mention a few competitors here. The first two are Energy Vault and Energy Bank. They're also in the long duration storage market. And some others are Gravitricity and Green Gravity, who are focusing on short duration storage. So Energy Vault are a Swiss-based company. They recently listed on the New York Stock Exchange and currently have a market cap of $2 billion US. They're using an above ground structure for their gravity energy storage system. And they say it will be roughly 100 metres tall. So for reference or for comparison to a VIPER system, if it were installed at a kilometre deep, which is certainly feasible, their system would need to use 10 times more mass and actually build a structure that can hold that amount of mass. And when we're talking tens to hundreds of kilotons, an order of magnitude more is quite significant. And they're also targeting long duration energy storage. Another targeting long duration energy storage is Energy Bank. They're a New Zealand-based startup company. They recently raised $2.7 million in their seed round, and they're building a gravity energy storage system in the ocean. And just a note on very long duration storage, like 50 hours. With long duration storage, longer isn't necessarily better, because the sort of duration of storage needs to match the intermittency profile of wind and solar that it's sort of supplementing. Gravitricity are a short duration storage company. They're based in the United Kingdom and recently raised £2 million via crowdfunding. They're working on a mineshaft-based gravity energy storage system. And a note on short duration storage, batteries do this really well. They're really excellent at it, and so this is probably a challenging space to be in. And finally, Green Gravity, which was very recently announced, an Australian-based company, also doing mineshaft-based energy storage. It's led by an ex-BHP executive, and yeah, is also short duration storage. Now onto the team. Who's working with me to develop the VIPER system? So we have a board of directors, we have a co-founding tech team, and several other generous people. So the gentleman who introduced me this morning, Richard Thomson, is the chairman of Economical Energy. He has a lot of experience in some very cool projects. We should definitely speak with him later about those. Adam Gamble Adam is a lawyer who specialises in corporate and commercial law. Andrew DeGarris, who's a director and has experience in subsurface development in oil and gas. Now on to the co-founding tech team. We have David Kaut, who's a mechanical engineer and has recently started full-time, which is a very exciting development. We have Scott Adamson, who's an electrical engineer and is currently working at ASC in his day job. We have Michael Short, who's a mining engineer. Michael unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. He's actually on site at Prominent Hill in his role as a mining engineering contractor. And finally, we have Ben Melville, who's a mechanical and software engineering student. Ben's excellent. He's a very hardworking and very well-rounded guy. There's also several other very generous people who I'd like to thank. Maria Rawson, who's helped us with accounting. John Rawson, who's helped us with tax. John Ayul and Mark Peacock, who helped us with testing at Adelaide Uni. And also Andrew Vandenberg, who helped us with access to equipment for the lab demo model. That's all I have prepared for this evening. Thanks very much. Thanks for